Welcome to the Biz Easy podcast, where small business is simplified for greater results. Brought to you by Resources and Development. Go to www.resources-development.com for help in taking your business to the next level. And now, help me welcome the host of the Biz Easy podcast, Steve McCrillis.
Welcome to the Biz Easy podcast, your resource to help take your business to the next level. My name is Steve, your host, as we all learn how to stay better focused on the things that make you great. Now, I'd like to introduce you to my partner and our resident guru of coaching, our lead business coach, Skip Williams.
Hey, thanks, Steve. How are you today?
Excellent. And I used my radio voice there. Did you like that?
Oh, that was excellent. A little more throaty there. Anyway, well, this week we got two letters that I want to address, Steve. The first is from Tina in Washington State that asks, "Is Skip always that serious? Doesn't he have a sense of humor?" So I thought this week I'd start with a more festive shirt just for you, Tina, and a joke. So before I get too serious, a farmer counted 196 cows in his field, but when he rounded them up, he had 200.
A farm joke. Oh my gosh, right up my alley.
Hey, now for the serious stuff. Dave from Montana asks, how do I transition from manager to leader in my business? That's an important question, Steve. This is critical to taking your business to that next level. And not transitioning is a mistake that many business owners make that stagnates the growth of their company and never allows them to realize their full vision. First, let me say congratulations for achieving some level of success. It sounds like through hard work, late nights, you've managed to build a business to some level of respect within your industry. And you're wise to realize that to continue to grow, you must step back from that work on the day-to-day issues and begin to work on the consistent long-term growth of the business. Just when I thought that was out, they pull me back in.
You know, you always come up with some reference or quote from a movie or a song, and it always happens to apply. That shows us your artistic side.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, that's Al Pacino from The Godfather, right?
Of course, Skip. We talked at length about working on the business versus working in the business. I hope that's not becoming a hackneyed expression. But so, how do you make a hands-on business owner change that function? I'm suspect we'll get to that. Let me just pause.
It's not easy. There'll be many distractions. You're probably encountering them right now that will suck you back into that day-to-day challenges. But you must fight against this to minimize those distractions. Perhaps it's time to hire a manager to become that buffer. Perhaps it's better training so that your employees can make more of the decisions. But whatever the solution is that you come up with, it'll probably go against your natural instincts that now require you to be involved in every decision. That ego that it took you to get into business to begin with and to build your business this far is frankly what you need to fight against in order to find that new happy place that allows you to set the vision for your company and inspire your lieutenants to execute that vision.
On some level, doesn't it take us back to clearly defined job responsibilities and performance expectations first?
Well, certainly. That's the first part of this. That's the step one, is to get people in place that can do the job, can make the decisions, can come to you with solutions instead of the problems. But there's more to it than that. So let me just continue. Inspire and influence now replaces sell and demand. You'll need to focus on how to increase the sales while they work on building the better operation. You'll be deal making rather than turning a wrench. You will work in broad strokes instead of dealing with details. So as you can imagine, it is critical to build a strong, capable team around yourself. A what's next boss type of direct report employees isn't going to cut it anymore. So to your point, Steve, step one is to build that good team that can work more autonomously. And then step two is to change your mindset and work on those things that will provide the long-term sustainable growth that your company needs. It's not easy, Steve, but it is critical. So think about it this way. Pareto said 80% of the results come from 20% of your efforts.
We've referenced the 80-20 or the Pareto principle many times. Actually, our book is based upon that. But what would be a good exercise for a business owner to catch himself and not answer the questions for his employees so that the business owner can focus on the 20%?
Well, you said it best in a previous podcast where when they come to you with a problem, you ask them how they would solve it. And generally they're going to know the answer. They just want your buy-in. But if they don't know the answer, then you lead them to it rather than telling them what the answer is. And I thought that was really good advice on your part, Steve. And the 80-20 rule is something I'm probably going to bring up almost every podcast. It is probably the most important lesson I learned early on in my business life. And if I stop and think about that 80-20 rule, that 80% of my results are going to come from 20% of my effort, then I can help myself refocus on that 20% part. So it's a good illustration of what you're probably doing right now. In effect, you're spending 80% of your time managing, or perhaps even as the technician, and 20% of it being a leader, working on that long-term benefit of your business. Imagine next week you could work on the good stuff 30% of the time, and the next month you work on it 40% of the time on these critical tasks, and eventually you've reversed the equation of to 80% of the time you're working on the deal making, sales increasing, infrastructure expansion that your business desperately needs.
So on our chat line, a question has come up from somebody listening saying, what happens if all of your people are subpar as it applies to what their responsibilities are? I think that's another podcast, Skip. What do you think?
Yeah, especially the recruitment interviewing portion, but we'll talk about that a little bit here. One is, it could be as simple as just giving your employees clearly defined job responsibilities, training them, better training and so forth, and investing some time in those employees before you move on and focus on the future. But if you don't have the right person in the right seat, then it's never going to work. So that's where it comes down to the recruitment and interviewing portion, and making sure that we hire people that have the natural talents that we're looking for. Would you like me to go in more depth on that?
Well, the first step you had pointed out is building the right team. How long does it take to shift gears to this format if you don't think you have a proper management in place now?
The time varies for sure. But to train your existing employees, you could probably, if they're capable of doing what you're going to be asking of them, you can start to make the turn here in probably 30 days. If it means bringing new people in, it might be more like a couple of months. But honestly, probably the thing that's going to take the longest is your own mind shift. Trying to get out of that day to day, trying to be involved in every little decision, and starting to focus more on the long-term health of your business.
I think when I first addressed the question with Dave, when he asked, what does it take to go from becoming a manager to a leader? It suggests to me that he wants to be a better leader rather than just a manager. So I think that I would have asked more questions to him about what do you recognize the difference to be? Now, that also suggests change. One of the first things that I have always spent time doing with a business owner is finding out where he is, how he thinks, what his expectations are, what his goals for the company are, short-term, long-term. Does he share those goals, expectations with his staff? Are they able to mirror those back to him so that he knows that he's communicated effectively with them? A guy that takes the position that wants to become a leader versus a manager suggests to me that he wants to take his company to a different level. Would you agree?
Agreed, and I applaud him for that.
So I would have to go back to his question and say, Dave, what are you lacking in being a manager and not a leader? When you see people make that transition, and it's because they've installed the job performance responsibilities and also the expectations for excellent performance, Then that sort of morphs to him becoming that leader, but it starts with him wanting that first. Would you agree?
That's right. It's before we can fix a problem, we have to recognize we have a problem. That's right.
12 steps. First step.
Is that the
All right,
first step,
my
fourth
name's
step?
Steve,
I'm
and I
not
want to
sure.
be a better leader.
Exactly. Uh, so, like I say, I applaud him for recognizing that something has to change, and then trying to figure out what it is that needs to change. And like I said, it's not only his employees that need to change; it's him too.
I think a manager or a business owner being wanting to be in a leadership role suggests that he does want to take his company to a new level. He does want to expand what he's doing and perhaps become less hands-on. And that is a very important point to come in your career. I've worked with business owners for many years who have been in the business for many years, and it took until they were 50, 55 before they got to the point where they say, you know what, this being involved in every day-to-day activity, every situation, every circumstance is tiring. It's exhausting. I'm working 24/7. I hardly see my family. I've wasted my life away with my family while I focused on my business, doing everything and anything that needs to be done. So after you build those job descriptions, after you build your organizational flow chart, after you build those expectations, communicate your goals, expectations for the company, and you're able to have this culture where they're all on the same page, there's a simple factor that must be engaged there. And we talked about that in another podcast. That's trust. That trust factor that you have built those people, you have built your organization among trust. They trust you, trust them. Your comment.
Yeah, it goes back to setting those expectations and and becoming the type of boss or leader that those employees do not want to disappoint. They they love working at the company. They love you. They love the vision that you have, and they want to be the next hero that you can depend on. Those are the folks that are clearly uh, doing uh, more than just uh, getting by at their job. And you've got to inspire at least a handful of those type of people in your organization, and they will make all the difference in the culture as well as the growth of the company, and ultimately free you up to be able to do the more important stuff that's going to affect the long-term growth of the business.
All too often, I run into business owners who spend a great deal of time expressing the things that they're going to offer their employees, whether it be part ownership, whether it be profit sharing, whether it be additional days off. But when an employee hears that, they remember it. Unfortunately, the business owner didn't remember that he said that. He was giving empty platitudes in order to spur the moment. And in time, the business owner gets to a point where nobody believes what he says anymore because he's not fulfilled those promises. I argue that don't make a promise that you can't fulfill, and don't make a statement that you're not going to be able to follow through on. And that's the first part of the trust element between employee and employer. um, Recently, I had a conversation with my daughter. She was working for a company, and the business owner promised, we're going to take these people to full time, and we're going to raise these rates for various of the staff, and then we're going to offer more holidays. Well, it got lost. It never happened. So you say that a couple of times, and suddenly they don't believe anything you say. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, broken promises will cripple you, and this goes back to even things that are well intentioned. Short-term solutions will always bite you in the butt. Short-term fixes, I should say, that don't solve the long-term problems will always bite you in the butt.
Sure, absolutely. Um, in your experience in working with small business owners, have you ever run across a Dave who had every ambition to becoming a leader, but just couldn't get himself out of his day to day, be involved, center of controversy role? And if you have, which I suspect you have, because I know that I have, how did you treat that? How did you handle that with the business owner?
Well, certainly you can counsel with that business owner and try and illustrate uh, uh, the the errors of getting involved with the minutia in his business, if they're at that point to go to the next level. Um, and some people cannot make that transition. But what I have recommended in the past is if you really can't stay out of every decision that's being made inside your business, then maybe you should work from a different place. Maybe you should work from home. Maybe you should be out on the road talking to your customers. Maybe you should try and separate yourself from it. If you cannot do it by asking questions, like you mentioned, of saying, how would you solve that, Joe? And instead of giving Joe the answer, you guide him to the correct answer. The employee probably already knows the answer anyway. He's just looking for your buy-in.
I think the advice that I would give, and I'm not really in a position generally to give advice, but when a business owner finds himself in that environment where he is dictating, he is firing off responses, he is finding himself immersed in the problem again, to stop, make a note, and bring that up and spitball with somebody who can give him some of those accountability measures where he can change that behavior. I don't believe you can change people, but you can change their behavior. You can manage their behavior more accurately. So when you get to that spot, that's why you need an accountability person, whomever that it might be it a coach, be it a counselor, but whatever. It will improve your workload, improve your psyche as a leader, as opposed to becoming just a manager.
Yeah, I see this. I failed to give you another solution. I think 90% of the business owners that I see that are at this juncture in their business, they need to work on the future and not on the present as much. They need and they find themselves wanting to make those decisions. I think a good solution is putting a buffer between you and the front lines, hiring somebody to field all those questions, to manage all those people, so that you can step away from it and focus on it. So that way, if any questions come up that are major enough that need your attention, that new manager can bring it to your attention.
Yeah, it's very self-effacing, no doubt. What final thoughts would you advise get for our two followers?
Well, through weekly coaching, I'm often refocusing business owners on those long-term tasks that will provide the greatest benefit to their business. We know building a business is one of the hardest things you'll do in your life, and the skill sets needed will change at various points along that journey. We also know that if transition never happens, not only will the business stagnate, but the owner often becomes burnt out. So please give me a call, or find somebody that you can trust. If you think it's time to refocus on your business, move your business towards the majors.
So I hate to reiterate a simple expression, but we don't want to get too far out into the weeds. These are not deep psychological problems. We find that most of the fundamentals of business can be remedied with the will to want to change and simple functions to do with it. That's why we call it biz easy.
It's easy, right? And 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 one of the things that people don't often realize, when I'm working with clients, I'm never asking them to take huge risks. I'm asking them to take small incremental changes, and then we analyze those changes and we adjust if necessary. So it's not about making huge changes in your business that may or may not work and you're rolling the dice. It really is mathematical certainty with which we go forward and on incremental improvements in the business that, when added together, make all the difference in the world.
So, not to sound biblical, but through very small changes, great things come to pass. We're not trying to reinvent the world here, right?
Well, that's right. We're trying to adjust the world that we live in.
Yeah.
We always do that.
There you go. So, with that, last few thoughts.
That's a wrap. Have a good one, Steve.